All right, welcome to our deep dive for February 6th, 2025. You ready for this?
Always.
It's a wild one today. AI is going crazy, smartphones seem to be slowing down, and Vanguard is, well, they're making them huge moves with fees.
Big changes happening all over.
Exactly. So first up, AI. Everyone's talking about it.
Right.
ARM Holdings, they designed a lot of chips for smartphones and AI systems.
Yeah.
Just put out their earnings report. Beat expectations. But they also kind of hinted that future growth might not be as explosive as everyone's hoping.
Makes you wonder why, right?
I know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's expecting this AI boom.
Yeah.
So any sign of hesitation?
Investors get nervous.
Totally. But here's what's interesting. ARM's CEO, Rene Haas, he's actually super bullish on AI.
Yeah.
Says demand is actually accelerating, especially for AI applications. And get this, ARM is partnering with OpenAI on this massive project called Stargate.
Heard of it?
It's huge. They're trying to build the largest AI data center for training those really complex AI models. Yeah, and the initial investment, $500 billion.
$500 billion? That's insane.
It's more than insane. It's like the entire GDP of some countries just poured into one project.
So what does that tell you?
That AI is going to be a game changer.
For sure. For everything, from research to like our everyday lives, everything.
And there's this whole geopolitical angle too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you've got ARM, a British company,
Okay.
partnering with OpenAI in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And, things between the U.S. and China on the tech front, they're not exactly smooth sailing.
You can say that again.
So Haas, he downplayed any worries about, relying too much on OpenAI.
Okay.
So ARM works with Google and Meta too.
Sure.
But honestly, ARM's a leading chip supplier. They're smack dab in the middle of this whole global tech battle.
Right in the thick of it.
Right. Speaking of competition, there's this Chinese company, DeepSeek.
DeepSeek, yeah.
They're doing some really cool stuff with open source AI models. They have this distillation technology. Basically, they're creating these more efficient versions of existing AI models, but they need less computing power.
Less power, same results.
Kind of like that. Think of it like, I don't know, like a concentrated medicine. Smaller dose, same effect.
Oh, I get it.
So they're making advanced AI more accessible, not just for companies, but researchers. Anyone, really.
That's a powerful idea. Everyone having access to that kind of tech.
It is.
Yeah.
But I can see where some people might get a little worried.
Child.
Security, if these crazy, powerful AI tools are that easy to get. It could get a little, dangerous.
That's a good point. I mean, it's a double-edged sword for sure.
Absolutely. Ben Harburg, he manages an America First equities ETF.
Okay.
It's basically an investment fund focused on American companies.
Gotcha.
He actually brought up some serious concerns about DeepSeek's rise.
Makes sense. National security and all that.
Right. Okay, let's shift gears a bit, talk about smartphones.
Sure.
Qualcomm, big chip maker, they rely a lot on the smartphone market.
Mm-hmm.
Their stock actually dropped, even though they beat earnings expectations.
Really? That doesn't seem right.
I know, right? But here's the thing. Investors are worried that smartphone sales are slowing down, especially in China.
Oh, I see.
Qualcomm's report, it showed revenue from iPhone chips went down like 24% year over year. And overall smartphone market growth, they're saying it's going to be in the single digits.
That's a big slowdown.
Huge.
Yeah.
And that's what's spooking investors. They're worried about a plateau.
It makes you wonder what the future holds for smartphones, right? Like, where do we go from here?
Yeah. And Rene Haas from ARM, he had a slightly different take on it.
Oh.
He said, yeah, maybe the number of smartphones sold is slowing down.
Yeah, okay.
But the chips in the new phones are way more advanced, and that means more money for ARM.
Interesting. So it's not just about how many phones are sold, it's about how much they're worth, too.
Exactly. Smartphone companies, they need to adapt to survive.
They definitely do.
Which reminds me of Roblox.
Roblox, the gaming platform.
Yep, their stock took a hit too.
Why is that?
Daily active users, it was lower than expected.
Yeah.
So investors are thinking, uh-oh, maybe growth is slowing down.
That's never good news for a company like that.
And here's a weird thing. Roblox partly blamed the decline on a ban in Turkey.
A ban?
Yeah, over child safety concerns.
I see.
It just goes to show, even in the digital world, real-world stuff can really impact a company's growth.
Definitely.
And it's not just Roblox. The whole gaming industry is going through some stuff.
In what way?
The cost to develop those big AAA games, it's crazy expensive. User-generated platforms like Roblox, they're a potential solution.
Right.
But they're facing more competition, too. It's a tough market.
Agreed. It'll be fascinating to see where it all goes, who comes out on top.
Okay, before we jump to Vanguard, let's quickly connect all this back.
To what?
Well, remember how we talked about that tension between global collaboration and national interests?
Yeah.
I think that's playing a huge role here, too.
You do? How so?
Well, think about it. You have these companies like ARM right in the middle of this tech competition between the U.S. and China. Then you've got companies like Roblox facing challenges from different countries over things like content regulations. It's all connected, isn't it?
Wow, yeah, it is. It's like a global chess game, with each move having ripple effects across different industries and countries.
Exactly. And then you add in the whole AI situation with DeepSeek. The potential benefits of open source AI are huge, but so are the risks, especially when it comes to security and potential misuse. It's a real balancing act for everyone involved.
It makes you wonder, how do we foster innovation and collaboration while also protecting ourselves from the potential downsides? It's a tough question with no easy answers, that's for sure.
Agreed. And that tension is likely to continue as technology keeps advancing and the world becomes even more interconnected. It's exciting, but also a little bit daunting, don't you think?
Definitely. It's a reminder that we need to stay informed, adapt to change, and be prepared to navigate a world that's constantly evolving.
Absolutely. Okay, so now for Vanguard, they just did something huge. They slashed fees for a ton of their mutual funds and ETFs.
Yeah.
Exchange-traded funds.
Right.
Basically, you can buy and sell them like stocks.
Okay.
They cut fees like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And fees, well, they eat into your returns over time.
Yeah.
The average fee at Vanguard is now just 7 basis points. Compare that to the industry average of 44 basis points.
Whoa, hold on. Basis points. What are those again?
It's just a way to measure tiny percentages.
Yeah.
1 basis point is 0.01%.
Oh, okay. So a big difference then.
Huge EE. This is awesome for investors because they keep more of their money in the long run.
Yeah, I see that.
But how can Vanguard afford to do this?
That's what everyone's wondering, right?
Well, Vanguard is owned by its investors,
Really?
which means they can share cost savings directly.
Smart.
Their CEO, Salim Ramji, made it clear they're not losing money on this. They're just passing on the savings.
That's reassuring. It makes you wonder, though, how low can fees actually go? Is there a limit?
It is a good question. Now, a lot of people think Vanguard is all about index funds.
Those are the ones that, track a specific market index, right?
Exactly. But they actually do really well with actively managed funds, too, especially in bonds.
Actively managed, meaning?
Professional managers decide what to buy and sell.
Oh, okay, I get it.
So how do these super low fees affect their active management strategies?
Interesting question.
Right. Well, Ramji called it giving their managers a lower headwind. Basically, with lower fees, they have more room to take smart risks.
To try and get higher returns.
Exactly. So we've covered a lot. AI, smartphones, Vanguard doing their thing with fees.
A lot to digest.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But what I think is super cool is how these seemingly separate things, they're all actually connected.
Yeah, you're right. There's a bigger picture here.
Like that whole idea of creative destruction.
Sense of destruction.
Yeah, like innovation comes in and shakes everything up.
Oh, yeah, I get it.
It's happening with AI right now, like DeepSeek and their open source models. There are risks, sure, but what if this actually makes AI safer in the long run?
How so?
Think about it. If everyone can see the code, they can find problems, make it more secure.
More eyes on the problem.
Yeah, it's like a global collaboration to make sure AI is used responsibly.
Now that would be a game changer.
For sure. And it makes you think, could this be a model for other new tech? But let's go back to smartphones for a minute. That slowdown. What does that mean for app developers?
That's a good point. If fewer people are buying new phones, there's less of a market for new apps. That means more competition for developers, especially the smaller ones.
Exactly. And what about how those apps make money? If in-app purchases or advertising aren't working as well, what do?
Good question.
Yeah.
We might see more subscription-based models or more niche apps catering to very specific groups.
So instead of trying to reach everyone, they go deep with a smaller audience.
Exactly.
Interesting. Now, back to Vanguard. Lower fees are great for investors, but are there downsides?
There could be. For example, what about those smaller asset management firms? Can they compete with Vanguard's low prices?
Maybe not. And if they get squeezed out?
Less competition. And that could mean fewer choices for investors down the line.
That's a really good point.
Plus, Vanguard might feel pressured to get higher returns to attract investors, even if it means taking on more risk.
It's like a chain reaction. One change leads to another.
Everything's connected in the financial world. That's what makes it so fascinating and unpredictable.
Absolutely. We've covered a lot, but I think what ties it all together is this tension between global collaboration and looking out for your own country's interests.
I agree. We see it everywhere. With DeepSeek and the concerns about open source AI, with the chip shortage and countries trying to secure their own supplies, it's a balancing act.
And it's only going to get more intense as tech keeps advancing and we all become more connected. But before we go any further, I want you to think about this.
About what?
Your own investments, the tech you use, even the games you play. How do you think these global trends are going to affect your everyday life?
Wow, that's a question to ponder. It's amazing how all these big ideas and trends actually filter down and touch our individual lives.
It is. It's like we're all part of this giant, complex system that's constantly in motion. But for now, let's take a break, let all this sink in, and we'll come back for the final part of our deep dive.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how everything's connected, huh?
It really is. Makes you think, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You know, while we were talking about AI and smartphones, I got thinking about, creative destruction.
Creative destruction. What do you mean by that?
You know, that idea that innovation, it kind of comes in and just disrupts everything?
Oh, yeah. Like wipes out old industries, creates new ones.
Exactly. And it's happening right now with AI, like with DeepSeek and their open source models.
Yeah, we were just talking about them.
We talked about the risks. But what if this open approach actually makes AI safer in the long run?
Safer. How so?
Well, if the code is out there for everyone to see, more people can look at it, find the weak spots, make it more secure.
More eyes on the problem, more solutions.
Right. It could become this global effort to make sure AI is used for good.
That's a pretty optimistic way to look at it. I like it.
Makes you wonder, could this be a model for other tech, too?
Potentially. I mean, who knows what the future holds? It's hard to predict these things.
But, okay, back to smartphones for a second.
Okay.
That slowdown we talked about.
Yeah.
What do you think that means for app developers?
Well, fewer new phones means fewer potential users for their apps, right?
Makes sense.
Could get really competitive for them, especially the smaller companies trying to get noticed.
Exactly. And how about how they make money? Those in-app purchases, advertising. If that stuff's not working as well, what then?
Well, they'll need to find new ways to bring in revenue, for sure.
Like subscriptions, maybe? Or do you think we'll see more of those really specialized apps? The ones that target a specific niche?
Yeah, potentially. Instead of trying to be everything to everyone, they might need to focus on being really good at something specific.
Interesting.
Definitely a shift in strategy for a lot of companies.
All right, let's loop back to Vanguard.
Okay, the fee cuts.
Lower fees, that's great for investors.
Yeah.
But are there any downsides? Anything to worry about?
Well, it could be tough for those smaller asset management firms.
How so?
I mean, they might not be able to match Vanguard's low prices. Not at the same scale,
Right, they might get squeezed out.
Exactly. And less competition is not always a good thing for the consumer.
Fewer choices. Yeah, that's a good point.
Plus, Vanguard themselves might feel pressure to make up for those lower fees. Maybe take bigger risks to try to get higher returns for investors.
It's like this ripple effect almost.
Yeah, one change triggers a whole cascade of other changes. That's the thing about finance. It's a complex system. Everything's interconnected.
It makes it kind of unpredictable too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Which is why it's so important to stay informed, be adaptable, and always be ready for the unexpected.
So we've dug a bit deeper into AI, smartphones, and Vanguard's moves.
Covered a lot of ground.
What I find really fascinating is how all these things, they actually tie back to that whole tension we were talking about between global collaboration and national interests.
Right. It's like a constant tug of war.
Exactly. We see it with DeepSeek and the worries about open source AI being misused. We see it with the chip shortage and countries trying to control their own supplies. It's everywhere.
It's like this fundamental question. How do we work together as a global community while also protecting our own interests?
It's a tricky balance to strike.
For sure. And it's a balance that will likely continue to be tested as technology advances and global interconnectedness continues to grow.
Now, before we move on, I want to bring it back to your own experience. Think about your own investments, the tech you use every day, even the games you play. How do you see all these global trends impacting your life?
It's a good question, and it's probably different for everyone. But it's worth considering because the answers could really shape our decisions and experiences in the years to come.
Absolutely. It's like we're standing at this crossroads with a future full of potential, but also a lot of uncertainty.
The choices we make today will determine which path we take and what that future will look like.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
But that's what makes these deep dives so engaging, right?
Definitely. It's about more than just understanding the facts. It's about connecting the dots, seeing the bigger picture, and using that knowledge to navigate the world around us.
So let's take a moment to process all this, and then we'll jump into the last part of our deep dive. All right, so AI, smartphones, Vanguard, shaking things up with fees.
Yeah.
But before we wrap things up, got to circle back to that tension we talk about.
Which one?
Global collaboration versus national interests. It feels like, I don't know, like it's at the heart of everything we've been discussing.
It's everywhere, isn't it? You see it with technology, trade, even like scientific research.
Right, like with DeepSeek, and those open source AI models.
Yeah.
Could be great for everyone, but then there's that security risk, right?
Yeah.
The potential for misuse.
Exactly. It's like governments are trying to figure out how to encourage innovation, but also protect their own interests. It's a tough balancing act.
And it's not just AI, right? Like with those critical resources, everyone's trying to secure their own supplies.
The pandemic, it really showed how fragile those global supply chains are. And now with, geopolitical tensions and everything, a lot of countries are focusing on like shoring up their own sources of essential stuff.
Makes sense from a national security perspective.
It does.
But it also brings up the whole issue of protectionism, trade wars, that kind of thing.
Right. And those things, they can actually end up hurting everyone in the long run.
It's a tough spot to be in, for sure. Feels like we're at this, I don't know, like a crossroads.
What way?
Figuring out how to balance national interests with the need to work together globally. I think we can do it.
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? The key, I think, is to find ways to encourage collaboration, but also address those legitimate security concerns.
Yeah, it's finding that balance.
Exactly. It takes open communication, a willingness to, really listen to each other's perspectives.
Well said. So to wrap up this deep dive, here's a thought to leave you with.
Okay.
We're living in a world that's, well, it's getting more complex and interconnected every day.
Yeah.
And the choices we make now, they're going to have a huge impact on the future.
Absolutely. It's a future full of potential, but also a lot of challenges. How we respond to those challenges, that's what's going to determine what happens next.
Powerful stuff. I think that about wraps it up for our deep dive today.
What a journey. I feel like my brain is full.
Mine too. It's amazing how much we can learn in such a short amount of time.
It is. But that's what the deep dive is all about, helping you understand this crazy, ever-changing world we live in. So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.